Welcome back to another Afro-Korean love story. Zuri Washington's tears dripped onto the cold floorboards, each sob echoing in a room that had become a terrifying cage. For weeks, she believed the devil was the man signing her paychecks, the man watching her from the shadows. But she was wrong. What do you do when the monster you fear is the only thing standing between you and the monster hiding under your bed? Let me know in the comments. She was 24, a runaway, a live-in maid who simply wanted to disappear inside the mansion walls. Now sitting broken before Choi Min-Joon, the sole kingpin who ruled with silence. The world called him a villain. The dead body beneath the mattress proved he was an executioner. His shirt was unbuttoned, his knuckles bruised, his expression void of mercy. The threat was neutralized. One scream, two monsters. This is how Zuri learned that sometimes, the safest place to be is behind the beast. The iron gates of the Choi estate slammed shut with a metallic finality that made Zuri flinch. The mansion before her wasn't a home. It was a monolith of glass and steel cutting into the gray soul sky, cold and impenetrable. She gripped the handle of her battered suitcase, her knuckles white. This was supposed to be her sanctuary, a place so high up the social ladder that the mud from her past couldn't reach her. Shoes, the head housekeeper, Mrs. Park, commanded, pointing to the polished marble of the entryway. And listen carefully. Mr. Choi does not tolerate noise. He does not tolerate disorder. Zuri nodded quickly, stepping out of her worn sneakers. I understand. There are rules, Mrs. Park continued, her voice as sharp as the clicking of her heels. You clean the common areas in the guest wing. You do not speak unless spoken to. And most importantly, the double doors at the end of the second-floor corridor, his office, are forbidden. You do not enter. You do not knock. You do not ask why. I won't, Zuri whispered. She didn't want to know what happened behind closed doors. She just wanted the paycheck that would keep her invisible. A sudden drop in temperature seemed to sweep through the foyer. Zuri looked up to see him. Choi Min-Joon stood at the top of the floating staircase, looking down like a king surveying a pest. He wore a charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, but his face was a mask of cold indifference. Zuri couldn't breathe. This was the man the rumors whispered about, the man who owned half the city and silenced the other half. He descended slowly, his gaze fixing on her. It wasn't a look of interest, it was a clinical assessment of a new asset. He stopped on the final step, towering over her. This is the new one. His voice was deep, smooth, and utterly devoid of warmth. Yes, sir. Zuri Washington, she managed to choke out, avoiding his eyes. He didn't blink. Do your job well, Ms. Washington, and we will have no issues. Be invisible, and you will remain employed. He brushed past her, the scent of expensive cologne and something metallic, like old copper, trailing in his wake. Zuri let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She hurried toward the servants' quarters, her heart hammering against her ribs. The house was silent, too silent, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. As she walked down the long, windowless hallway leading to her room, the hair on the back of her neck stood up. It was a prickling sensation, distinct and heavy. A gaze boring into her spine. She spun around, her eyes scanning the empty corridor. Hello, she whispered into the gloom. Nothing but the long shadows stretching across the floor. The hallway was empty. But as she turned the key to her room, Zuri couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness behind her was breathing. The silence of the estate was heavier than the dust Zuri was paid to eliminate. For 3 days, she had scrubbed marble floors and polished mahogany banisters until her reflection stared back at her, warped and exhausted. The physical labor was a welcome distraction, a way to numb the lingering unease that had settled in her chest since she walked through the front doors. But the house didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. It started small, like a glitch in her memory. On Tuesday, she left her silver hairbrush on the bathroom vanity. When she returned from her shift that evening, it was sitting perfectly in the center of her pillow. Zuri stared at it, her towel dripping onto the floor. I didn't put that there. She shook her head, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle in the small room. Get it together, Zuri, she muttered. You're tired. You're just tired. She was working 14-hour days, trying to prove her worth to Mrs. Park and the terrifying man upstairs. It was natural for things to blur. By Thursday, the glitches became harder to ignore. A photo of her mother she kept on the nightstand was turned face down. A lipstick she hadn't used in months was uncapped, rolling across the floor when she opened the door. Fear pricked at her skin, but shame pushed it down. Who could she tell? Mrs. Park, who watched her with hawk-like scrutiny, waiting for a mistake. Or worse, Choi Min-Joon. The thought of approaching the double doors on the second floor made her stomach turn. Min-Joon demanded perfection. If she went to him claiming that hairbrushes were moving on their own, he wouldn't see a victim, he would see a liability. He would see a hysterical girl who couldn't handle the job. She couldn't lose this paycheck. She couldn't go back to the life she ran from. So, she swallowed the fear and kept cleaning. She was in the West Wing guest room, a space that hadn't been used in years, dusting the heavy velvet drapes. As she reached for the top of the frame, a draft hit her face. Cold, biting air. Zuri froze. She looked down. The window latch was undone, the pane raised 3 inches. Her blood ran cold. She had cleaned this room yesterday. She distinctly remembered locking this specific window because the latch had been stiff. She had fought with it until it clicked. Mrs. Park, she called out, her voice trembling. The only answer was the wind whistling through the gap. Mrs. Park never came to this wing. Min-Joon never left his office. Zuri gripped the sill, her knuckles white. Someone had been here. Someone had opened this window, not to get out, but perhaps to let something in. Or worse, someone was already inside, moving through the rooms she had just cleaned, touching the things she touched. She slammed the window shut and engaged the lock with a loud snap. "You're crazy," she whispered to the empty room, backing away. "You're losing your mind." But as she fled the room, she couldn't shake the sensation that the shadows in the corner of the ceiling were watching her leave. The silver tea service rattled against the porcelain cups, betraying Zuri's terror as she waited for permission to enter the forbidden sanctuary. Mrs. Park had been explicit. "Mr. Choi requested tea. You deliver it, you leave, you do not breathe too loudly. Enter," a voice commanded from within, deep and vibrationless. Zuri pushed the heavy oak doors open. The study was a cavern of shadows and dark wood, illuminated only by the glow of a monitor and a single desk lamp. Choi Min-Joon sat behind a massive desk, his attention fixed on a stack of files. He didn't look up as she approached, his pen scratching violently across a document. She set the tray down on the corner of the desk, wincing as the china clinked softly. "Your tea, sir." "Leave it," he said. Zuri turned to flee, desperate to escape the oppressive gravity of the room. "Wait." The single word froze her in place. She turned back slowly. Min-Joon had stopped writing. He was looking at her now, his eyes dark and unreadable, dissecting her. He didn't gesture for her to sit, he simply stared until the silence felt like a physical weight. "You have no references, Ms. Washington," he stated flatly. It wasn't a question. No family listed in the city. No prior address for the last 6 months. I prefer to keep to myself, sir," Zuri stammered, gripping her apron. "I just wanted a fresh start." Min-Joon stood up. The movement was fluid and predatory. He walked around the desk, closing the distance between them until he towered over her. "Fresh starts are for people running away. What are you running from?" Zuri's heart hammered against her ribs. She thought of the moved hairbrush, the open window. "Nothing. I just needed the work. Do not lie to me." His voice dropped an octave, dangerous and low. He leaned in, invading her personal space. "My security systems are state-of-the-art. Yet, the perimeter sensors have been twitchy, uneasy, like a parasite is trying to attach itself to the host." Zuri stepped back, terrified. She thought he was accusing her of theft, or worse, implying she was the parasite. "I haven't done anything. I do my job. I stay in my room. Do you?" His gaze drifted to her hands, which were shaking uncontrollably. "Are you alone, Zuri?" "Truly alone." "Yes," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "Please, I need this job. I haven't brought any trouble." Min-Joon studied her face for a long, agonizing moment. He wasn't looking at her fear, he was looking past it, calculating variables she couldn't comprehend. He had seen the disturbances on the logs. He knew someone was testing the mansion's defenses. He just needed to know if the girl was a conspirator or the bait. "Trouble usually follows those who try hardest to hide," he said coldly, turning his back on her. "Go back to your work. And lock your door." Zuri fled the room, her chest heaving. She thought he was threatening to fire her. She didn't realize he had just given her the first order of survival. That night, the sky over Seoul tore open. Rain lashed against the reinforced glass of Zuri's bedroom window, a relentless, drowning rhythm that matched the rising panic in her chest. The mansion, usually a fortress of silence, groaned under the assault of the wind. Zuri lay rigid in her bed, the duvet pulled up to her chin. She had checked the lock on her door 3 times. She had wedged a chair under the handle, a trick she learned living in bad neighborhoods back home. But the chair felt like a toy against the weight of the darkness pressing in. The overhead light flickered once, twice, and then died. The room plunged into absolute blackness, save for the occasional strobe of lightning that illuminated the unfamiliar furniture in ghostly flashes. Zuri held her breath, straining her ears against the roar of the storm. Scritch. It was faint, buried under the thunder, but she heard it. A sound like fabric dragging across the floorboards. "It's the wind," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's just the old house settling." She squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to count sheep, to count paychecks, to count anything that wasn't the seconds ticking by. But then, she heard it again. Closer this time, a soft, rhythmic exhalation. Hew, hew. It sounded like it was coming from the foot of her bed. Zuri's heart slammed against her ribs like a trapped bird. She opened her mouth to scream, to call for Min-Joon, for Mrs. Park, for anyone, but fear paralyzed her throat. The lightning flashed again, bathing the room in white fire for a split second. The room appeared empty. The chair was still wedged under the door handle. "You're crazy," she breathed, tears leaking from her eyes. "You're just crazy." The breathing stopped, or maybe the storm just got louder. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her into a fitful, nightmare-ridden sleep. She woke to the gray, washed-out light of dawn. The storm had passed, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Zuri sat up, her body aching from tension, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She felt foolish for her paranoia. The door was still locked. The chair was still there. She was safe. She turned to the nightstand to grab her phone to check the time. Her hand froze mid-air. Sitting perfectly in the center of the coaster, right beside her water glass, was a small, folded piece of paper. Resting on top of it was a lock of hair. Zuri recoiled, scrambling backward until her back hit the wall. She touched her own hair frantically, her braids were intact. She leaned closer, her stomach churning with bile. The hair on the nightstand was short, straight, and coarse. It was tied with a piece of red thread. It wasn't hers. Trembling, she reached out and unfolded the paper beneath it. There were no words, just a crude drawing of a sleeping face. Her sleeping face. He hadn't been outside. He hadn't been in the hallway. The breathing she heard, it hadn't been the wind. He had been right there, standing over her while she slept, watching her dream. Adrenaline burned through the exhaustion, turning Zuri's fear into a sharp, jagged weapon. She didn't bother with her uniform. She stormed down the grand staircase, the lock of hair and the drawing clenched in her fist like a grenade. She found him in the kitchen, leaning against the pristine island, nursing a black coffee. He looked immaculate, unaffected by the storm or the horrors of the night. It made her sick. "I quit," Zuri announced, her voice cracking but loud. Min-Joon lowered his cup slowly. He didn't look surprised. He looked bored. "The contract requires a 2-week notice, Ms. Washington. To hell with your contract." Zuri slammed the crumpled drawing and the lock of coarse hair onto the marble counter between them. "Is this part of the job description? Sneaking into my room, watching me sleep, leaving trophies?" Min-Joon's eyes flicked to the hair. For a fraction of a second, the boredom shattered. His pupils contracted, a predator spotting blood. He reached out, picking up the lock of hair with 2 fingers, examining the red thread. "I know it was you," Zuri spat, stepping back as he inspected the evidence. "It's your house, your security. No one else could get in. I thought you were just strict, but you're sick." Min-Joon didn't defend himself. He didn't deny it. He dropped the hair back onto the counter and pulled his phone from his pocket. His silence was the ultimate admission of guilt in Zuri's eyes. "I'm leaving," she said, turning on her heel toward the back exit. "I'm getting my things, and if you try to stop me, I'll scream until the neighbors hear." "The neighbors are 2 miles away," Min-Joon said calmly. He tapped the screen of his phone once. A heavy, mechanical thud echoed through the house. Then another. And another. Zuri froze. The sound was coming from the windows. She ran to the patio doors just in time to see heavy steel shutters sliding down over the glass, sealing out the morning sun. "What are you doing?" She spun around, panic rising in her throat. "Open them." Min-Joon walked around the island, his movements slow, deliberate. He stopped 3 feet from her, blocking the only path to the hallway. The kitchen was dim now, lit only by the under-cabinet LEDs, casting his face in severe shadows. "You aren't leaving, Zuri. You can't keep me here. That's kidnapping." She backed up until her hips hit the glass of the locked door. "Let me out. You think the danger is inside this house." Min-Joon's voice was low, devoid of emotion. "You are wrong. If you step out that door right now, you won't make it to the main road." "Because of you," she screamed. "Because you are being hunted," he said, stepping closer until he loomed over her. "And I am the only thing keeping the wolves at bay. You stay, you lock your door, and you pray I solve this quickly." He turned and walked away, leaving her trapped in the terrifying dark of his protection. The silence in Zuri's room was a lie. It hummed with the electric tension of a trapped animal preparing to gnaw off its own leg. She didn't care about the steel shutters or Min-Joon's terrifying warnings. He was the danger. He was the one who had locked the doors. He was the one leaving twisted little gifts on her nightstand to toy with her. She threw her clothes into the suitcase blindly, not bothering to fold them. Tears blurred her vision, hot and frustrating. She just needed to get to the main road. She would climb the perimeter fence if she had to. She would run until her lungs burned. Anything was better than staying in this mausoleum with a man who thought he owned her. "Just get out," she sobbed, zipping the bag with trembling hands. "Just move, Zuri." She snatched her phone from the bedspread to call a ride-share to the gate, her fingers slick with sweat. She fumbled. The device slipped from her grip, hitting the hardwood floor with a loud clack. It didn't stop. Momentum carried it, sliding across the polished wood until it vanished into the darkness beneath the heavy oak bed frame. "No, no, no." Zuri dropped to her knees, panic spiking. That phone was her lifeline. Her flashlight, her map. She flattened herself against the floor, pressing her cheek to the cold wood. It was pitch black underneath. She couldn't see the screen's glow. It must have landed face down. "Come on," she hissed, reaching her arm into the gap. She swept her hand back and forth, her fingers brushing against dust bunnies in the cold floor. She stretched further, her shoulder jamming against the bed frame, straining to reach deeper into the shadows. Her fingertips grazed something. It wasn't the smooth glass of a phone. It wasn't the hard plastic of a lost button. It was soft. It was warm. Zuri froze. Her breath hitched in her throat. She kept her hand still, her mind trying to rationalize the sensation. Maybe it was an old slipper. Maybe it was a forgotten sweater. Then, the texture shifted. She felt the curve of a cheekbone. The bristly friction of unshaven stubble. The moisture of an exhaled breath against her palm. A scream died in her throat, choked off by pure, primal horror. She wasn't touching an object. She was cupping a human face. And the face moved. Violent, frantic movement erupted from the darkness. A hand shot out from the abyss, grabbing her wrist with a bruising grip. Zuri stared into the gap, and for a split second, her eyes adjusted to the gloom. She saw the whites of eyes widening in mania. She saw a mouth stretching into a twisted grin. It wasn't Min-Joon. "Found you," a voice rasped from the dust. It was Ethan. Zuri screamed, a raw, tearing sound that shredded her throat, but the sound was swallowed by the sudden violence of the pull. Ethan didn't let go. With a strength born of obsession, he yanked her arm, dragging her torso down hard against the floorboards. Her chin slammed into the wood, stars exploding behind her eyes. "Don't fight it, Zuri. Don't fight me," Ethan hissed, his voice scraping like sandpaper. He began to scramble out from the darkness, spider-like, limbs flailing and dragging dust bunnies with him. He was gaunt, his eyes sunken and wild, wearing clothes that smelled of mildew and days of hiding in cramped spaces. "Get off me." Zuri kicked blindly, her heel connecting with his shoulder, but he barely flinched. He was fueled by a manic, terrifying adrenaline. He lunged, pinning her legs with his weight, crawling up her body until his face was inches from hers. His breath was hot and sour. "I waited," he panted, his hands clamping down on her shoulders, shaking her. "I waited in the walls. I waited under the floor. I told you we were meant to be together. Why did you run?" Why did you make me chase you? You're crazy. Zuri sobbed, clawing at his face, her nails raking down his cheek. Help. Someone help me. Shish, don't cry. Ethan's expression shifted instantly from aggression to a twisted, sickly adoration. He caught her wrists in one hand, pinning them above her head. I'm going to take you away from him. That man, he's bad, Zuri. He's evil. But I'm here now. He lowered his head, trying to bury his face in her neck. I'm here, Zuri thrashed, panic turning her blood to ice. No, get off. Ethan's grip tightened, bruising her skin. You belong to me. You always. Crack. The sound wasn't a knock. It was an explosion. The heavy oak bedroom door didn't just open, it disintegrated inward, the lock shattering under the force of a blow that shook the entire room. Wood splinters rained onto the floor. Ethan froze, his head snapping up. Framed in the ruined doorway stood Choi Min-Joon. He wasn't out of breath. He wasn't panicked. He stood in a stillness that was more terrifying than the violence he had just inflicted on the door frame. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with tension. But it was his face that stopped Zuri's heart. The cold indifference was gone. In its place was a darkness so absolute, so murderous, that it sucked the air out of the room. He didn't look at Zuri. His eyes were locked on Ethan with the focus of a predator watching a dying animal. Get off her, Min-Joon said. The voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. Ethan scrambled back, pulling a knife from his belt, a jagged, rusted thing. Stay back. She's mine. I'll kill her. I'll kill us both. Min-Joon didn't flinch. He didn't pause. He stepped into the room, walking straight toward the blade. Then you better be faster than me. Back off. Ethan shrieked, hauling Zuri up by her braids. The jagged knife pressed against the soft skin of her throat, drawing a thin bead of blood. I swear to God, I'll do it. Min-Joon didn't pause. He didn't even blink. He walked toward the blade as if it were an illusion. You think you can threaten what is mine in my own house? Ethan panicked. The calm, terrifying approach broke his nerve. He shoved Zuri forward, trying to use her body as a barrier while he slashed wildly at Min-Joon's face. It was a mistake. Min-Joon moved with a speed that defied the laws of physics. He didn't dodge, he intercepted. His left hand shot out, catching Ethan's wrist in midair. There was a sickening crunch of bone, loud and dry like a snapping branch. Ethan's scream was cut short as Min-Joon twisted, using the stalker's own momentum to hurl him across the room. Ethan crashed into the wardrobe, the wood splintering under the impact. The knife clattered uselessly to the floor. Zuri scrambled backward, pressing herself into the corner, gasping for air. She watched, paralyzed, as Min-Joon closed the distance. Ethan tried to rise, blood pouring from his nose, his arm hanging at an unnatural angle. He swung a desperate, clumsy fist. Min-Joon caught it in his open palm, his expression bored. With a fluid motion, he drove his knee into Ethan's solar plexus. The air left Ethan's lungs in a wet gurgle, and he collapsed to his knees. This wasn't a fight, it was a correction. It was the difference between a man who used violence because he was crazy, and a man who mastered violence because it was his trade. Min-Joon grabbed a handful of Ethan's greasy hair, yanking his head back to expose his throat. Ethan clawed at Min-Joon's white shirt, his dirty fingernails leaving streaks on the pristine fabric, his eyes bulging with the realization of his own death. You wanted her attention, Min-Joon whispered, leaning down, his voice intimate and cold. Now you have mine. Min-Joon's hands clamped around Ethan's throat. Ethan thrashed, his legs kicking against the floorboards, his sneakers squeaking against the wood, the only sound in the room besides the wet, ragged gasps for air. Min-Joon didn't grunt, he didn't grimace. He simply squeezed, his forearms flexing with terrifying, hydraulic power. He watched the life drain out of Ethan's eyes with the same detachment one might use to watch a candle burn out. The thrashing slowed, then stopped. Min-Joon held him for a moment longer, ensuring the deed was absolute. Then, he released his grip. Ethan's body hit the floor with a heavy, final thud, sprawling unnaturally, one leg twisted, the other straight, just as he would appear under the bed later. Min-Joon stood up, towering over the corpse. He looked at his hands, then at the dead man, and finally, he turned his gaze to Zuri. The room was silent again, but the air was heavy with the metallic scent of blood and the crushing weight of his protection. Zuri collapsed onto the edge of the mattress, her knees pressed tight against her chest, her face buried in her trembling hands. The adrenaline that had fueled her screams was gone, replaced by a cold, numbing shock. The room was deathly quiet, save for the low hum of the air conditioning, which had kicked back on, indifferent to the carnage. Min-Joon stood near the wardrobe, picking up a white cloth from the dresser. He wiped his knuckles slowly, methodically removing the red stains from his skin. His breathing had already returned to a slow, steady rhythm, his pulse seemingly unaffected by the life he had just extinguished. He looked down at the body sprawled on the floor, Ethan's legs protruding from the shadows of the bed frame, his canvas sneakers pointing awkwardly at the ceiling, still and silent. Then, Min-Joon looked at Zuri. "Zuri," he said. She flinched, her head snapping up. She expected anger. She expected him to blame her for bringing this chaos, this filth, into his pristine fortress. She looked at the blood on the floor, the splintered wood of the door frame. I'm so sorry," she choked out, wiping frantically at her eyes. "All clean. Clean this up," Min-Joon interrupted, tossing the bloodied cloth onto the corpse. Zuri moved to stand, reaching for the mess, but Min-Joon stepped forward, his shadow falling over her. "Not the room," he commanded, his voice devoid of anger but heavy with authority. He pointed a finger at her tear-streaked face. "Yourself. Stop shaking. It is done." He pulled his phone from his pocket, dialing a single number. "I need a crew in the West Wing. Bedroom 3. 1 disposal. And get a carpenter for the door. Tonight." He hung up before anyone could answer. He walked over to her, stopping inches from her knees. Zuri didn't shrink away this time. She looked up at his unbuttoned shirt, the raw, disciplined power evident in his stance. He wasn't a hero in shining armor. He was a predator who had simply decided she was part of his pack. He reached out, his thumb brushing a stray tear from her cheek. The touch was rough, possessive, and infinitely safe. "Go to the master suite," he ordered, his hand lingering on her jaw. "You sleep there tonight. No one gets in unless I let them in." Zuri watched him walk out into the hallway to wait for his cleaners, his silhouette framing the broken door. She looked down at the dead stalker one last time, feeling a strange, heavy peace settle over her bones. The fear that had ruled her life for months was gone, choked out by a stronger, darker force. She realized then that she would never check the locks again. She stopped looking for monsters under her bed. She slept soundly from that night on, because she knew the biggest monster in the city was sleeping beside her.